So I am of the conviction that our continent will not actualize fully until each and every one of us starts to take seriously the gifts and the talents that lie naturally within us and leverage those for creativity, for innovation, and ultimately for genius. One of the biggest issues I come across with leaders that I work with is that often they have been set on a path that they have no business being on, and the chance of them really being competitive, of them reaching peak performance, is slim to none. And so, because of that, we are missing out on the full possibility of what we could become as a people because we haven't connected to that which we came to the earth to do. So, all of you will know I am obsessed with gifts and talents. I believe that there is something that each of us is so naturally wired to do that if we leverage that, we would be able to do our deepest work. And so, of course, what comes after that when I speak to this is that people say, well, how do I know what my strength and talent is? I've been for so long doing work that is outside of that. I don't know how to locate it anymore. Here are 5 easy ways to locate what your natural gift or talent is. The first is this is something that you do so easily. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to apply too much effort to it. It's something that just occurs to you naturally. You're in the shower and you're coming up with ideas. You're taking a jog. You're likely playing with your children and you just have these ideas zinging through your head. Or you have this way of doing or being with things, with paraphernalia that makes you really sophisticated without even trying. And I believe this is one of the things that has taken people away from the gift, because one of the things about gifts is that because we exist in a culture of hard work, this idea that any work that is worth being talked about is hard, and it means that you have suffered through it. And we've got all of these stories around no pain, no gain, which have some validity. But I think what they do is that they make it such that anything that you can access easily doesn't seem like something you can take seriously. So, I remember some time doing a strengths-based leadership workshop with an executive team. And I had this exercise where I asked them to go back to their childhood and look at things that they naturally gravitated towards without having been forced to. A lot of the executives said to me, I can't think of anything obvious, right? So I'm hearing people say they used to break apart television sets, so maybe they're natural engineers. Or I hear people talk about the fact that they used to love, words and talking, and so maybe they're natural speakers. Or I hear some people say that they used to, love playing with love the idea of putting together certain elements or chemicals, and so maybe there's some sort of physics or chemistry in there. But he says, I can't think of anything that is so that was natural to me that it comes up as something obvious as a gift. So I asked him to talk me through his childhood. What are some of the things that you enjoyed doing? And then he had a remembrance that he grew up in a village and he used to love walking up the mountain with the elders in the village. And I said to him, why do you think that was? First of all, was it common that children walked up the mountain with elders? He said, absolutely not. And I said, so why do you think that was? And he said, I just always had a knack to enter any room with any group of people and be able to fit in. And just as he was saying that, he realized that his team were always looking to him to go into the hard negotiations. His team were always looking to him to always have the hard conversations for him. And in just that moment, he realized my strength is negotiation. I'm extremely powerful at creating win-win situations for 2 different sides of the room. And that's always been that's how I've always been since I was a child. I said, there you go. Right? So it's these things that we do so easily that they're so easy to miss because they don't sort of fit into the philosophy that we have about what it means to do meaningful work in the world. So that's number 1. The second way in which you can tell your natural gift or talent is that you are able, with one or few observations, to make sophisticated connections that then allow you to solve a problem in quite a sophisticated way, right? So what I mean by that is you can hear something and all of a sudden your mind starts to churn, right? You hear something and then you start you sort of thinking cause and effect. You start thinking consequence and outcome. You start to see connections that other people don't naturally see. And that's usually a sign that your brain is naturally wired towards problem solving in a particular way. So I had a taxi driver when I lived in Johannesburg, where every time we were listening to the news on the radio, he would hear a political event that has taken place, and he would immediately start to tell me the history that made this political event possible. He'd literally go back 10 years, 15 years, when they had this Congress and this forum and these two people met under this tree. And because of that, we are where we are. I mean, it was incredible to hear just how his mind worked. And so if you find yourself being able to make these very easy connections, but very sophisticated, let me say that again, because I said that wrong. You're able to make very sophisticated connections and very easily, right? And so you're able to problem solve around this particular subject matter. That's usually a sign that you have natural wiring. And here's what's really powerful about this. You see, if you are able to do this, it means that with your 10,000 hours, as Malcolm Gladwell says, and in fact, some researchers have said when you have a natural talent, it's actually 5,000 hours. With those hours, you are able to then reach peak performance. You are able to reach genius, right? And so it doesn't take effort for you to actually start to spike in this gift that you have. Whereas when you're doing things that you have no business doing, and I keep trying to tell people this, you cannot then compete with the person who has the natural wiring. So why are you bothering yourself, right? If somebody else has a natural wiring and you are now trying to get in there doing what you're doing with, working from a weakness or working from a sort of a mediocre ability, I mean, what are the chances you could ever be competitive? What are the chances you could reach peak performance? And so my invitation is to start to say, where is that thing where I'm making these dots very naturally without too much effort, but they're so sophisticated that it actually shows me that there's a strength. Number 3, you envy people who are doing this work. So what comes up as jealousy for you, what comes up is you looking at other people and going, I could do that better. If I had a chance, if I had the resources you had, if I had the money you had, if I had the access you had, if I had the connections you had. I often say to people, follow that line of thinking, because there's something about our emotions that is a pathway. Our emotions sometimes are really trying to show us something much deeper than what is manifesting on the surface, right? So if you really think about it, if you look at someone doing something that you feel naturally drawn to and you feel envy or jealousy, that may be a sign that there's something calling you about that thing, but it's now showing up in its shadow, right? So it's showing up as jealousy and envy, whereas in its light, it's actually where your natural strength is. Let me just look at my notes and see what was the 4th thing. The 4th thing is you lose time doing it, right? And so when we have natural gifts and talents, what starts to happen, because we can make these sophisticated connections, because we are connecting dots, because it's flowing so naturally through us, we are actually losing time as we are doing it, right? So these are the things where it's 2 a.m., it's 3 a.m., and you're like, how did I get to this time? There's just such a flow that starts to happen as you connect the head brain, the heart brain, the gut brain, and all sorts of sophisticated patterns are manifesting themselves to you that you lose time as you're doing it. And this is so powerful because, again, for all of the problems that we have on this continent, we need people who are losing time doing things so that we are actually creating sophisticated products, services, outcomes that actually make a difference on this continent. And the final way in which to tell that you have a natural gifting is people give you feedback about it all of the time. People thank you for it. People compliment you and say you're amazing at this. This thing that you do is such a blessing. I remember when I used to, before I even knew that coaching was a thing, I enjoyed just hearing people's problems and really helping them grapple through them and think through them. And people used to thank me so much. I remember even as a child, I used to get into conversations I had no business getting into. And I found that people, I'd be talking to people who are much older than I am, and they were like, there's just a level of understanding that you have about these people issues, and thank you. But I was obsessed at the time with being good at mathematics, because everybody around me was saying to be a mathematician or to be good at mathematics so that you can do engineering or medicine is what makes you an important human being on the planet. And so I always just ignored this feedback. This feedback was just like, doesn't really mean anything to me, doesn't really make sense to me. And so because of that, I was missing, like I said in point number one, that actually this thing that I was continually being thanked for is where my deepest work lies. And so it's for you to start to see, where are these things happening for you, and how can you start to leverage them. And I really believe that when we all start to connect to that which is deeply innate in us, that which comes naturally, that which is a natural wiring, it is only then that we can see the full manifestation, the full self-actualization of all of the possibilities that this continent holds. For those of you who are parents, start to notice your children and what they gravitate towards, and don't deny them that. Let them experiment, let them break things. You can always replace things, but when your child is discovering things that will make a difference on this continent, that will ultimately give them fulfillment, allow them to create organizations and companies that solve some of our toughest problems, you'll be thankful, right? It doesn't seem that way on the surface, because we're often thinking just materially, this child has broken something and it puts us in such an inconvenience, but we often miss that they could be onto something. And here's the last thing that I'll say. Stop asking your children, what do you want to be when you grow up? I've been saying this now for at least 7 years. Stop asking your children this, because it puts in their mind the idea that whatever it is they're attracted to now is not grown up, is not sophisticated, is not what is serious and right. And so, it almost forces them to get out of themselves to start to give you answers based on what they're hearing in the society. Rather ask a child, what grabs your attention? What do you love? What pulls you to itself? What makes you feel strong and powerful and smart? What makes you feel like you can apply yourself in a way that gives you joy and happiness? Because children, more than anything else, know and understand what these things are. It's just our society pulls them away from it. And before you know it, they're the adults that are going, what is my natural strength? What is my natural talent? So my invitation through this video is strengths-based leadership is the way forward. There are assessments that you can take online. There are assessments that you can purchase online. Marcus Buckingham, the Gallup Institute's strengths-based leadership. Look them up, start to understand what your strengths are, and start to apply them. That is your highest possibility, just waiting to manifest. Thank you, and love and light.